when you reverse outcome something, whether it's your shirt for the day or like your parents' medical plans, like you have to realize you can't truly plan for everything. Like you can be prepared, but you cannot plan everything down to a T because it's going to not work. Hey there, this is Unburdened by Hope, the podcast that helps you harness your possibility and fuel your purpose. I'm your host, Erin Cummings. Here we're breaking free from the chains of hope and unlocking the power of inspiration within. Get ready to ignite your soul because we're diving deep into the art of letting go, embracing the unknown, and creating a life unburdened by the limitations of hope. Together, we'll uncover the secrets to finding purpose, fueling our passions, and crafting a vibrant existence that sets our hearts on fire. So, are you ready to burn down what's no longer serving you and step into a life driven by possibility? Let's dive in, my friends, and unleash our boundless potential. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unburdened by Hope with me, Erin Cummings. We are at episode 16. I would love to hear what you've decided to outsource based on last week's episode. This week, I want to talk about creating a reverse outcome to help you make a decision. So this is something I really like to do. I like to say I've lived through this. I worked with a coach a long time ago, and a lot of the stuff we talked about was being prepared, not being planned. And I think this is one of those really awesome things that really can help you make the next step forward, and especially not to overthink certain situations. We had one of my lectures in one of my entrepreneurship classes. It was last week or the week before, and he said something hysterical that applies to the class I was taking, but I was like, oh my God, I have to use this in a podcast. And he said it was, I can't remember what they're called now, but it's when the letters create a word, but it was swag. He said swag is better than wag. And he had written that on our notes. And I was like, what in the world is this? Because I think swag, and I think, when I talk about swag, it's shit we all get. So it's when you go to somewhere and they hand you a goodie bag, I consider that to be swag. But he used swag as a somewhat of a wild ass guess is better than just a wild ass guess. And I was like, oh my God, this is hysterical and so true. And so I thought, why not create a whole podcast about swag, somewhat of a wild ass guess? And really what I want to talk about is creating a reverse outcome scenario when you're making a decision. So that would mean not only thinking about, okay, what's best case scenario, or for most of us, we automatically go to what's worst case scenario, but also what's best case scenario in this situation too. So when you're trying to decide something, we talked about, I feel like I talk about decision-making a lot, but when you're trying to decide something, it's kind of being able to see both outcomes of a situation, not just what you want to have happen, but also what you don't want to have happen when you're looking for something. So if you're an entrepreneur, it's and you're hiring someone, or maybe there's someone on your team that you're kind of struggling with. It's okay, well, what's the best situation here? Or what's one of the worst situations that could happen? And I think to put it into your life and your perspective, we talked about last week, if you were to look at your life and you look at your life now and you look at your life 5 years from now, it can be so scary, right? So it's you look at your life now and then you look at your life 5 years from now. And what if you're doing the exact same thing that you're doing right now? Everything. What if you're same job, same partner, same struggles, same challenges, same successes, no change at all? Are you happy or unhappy? And if you're unhappy with that, why? I would be unhappy. Yeah, so I have a goal. So by the time I'm 41, so that'll be 5 years from now, of something that I want to do. And if I don't hit that goal, so in 5 years now, if everything's the same, that means I took no steps to get to that goal of what I want. And that would be just terrible, absolutely terrible. So if you think about this, if I have a goal in mind, it's you have to look at well, what if this actually does happen and I need the steps to get there? Or what if it doesn't happen? What if every single thing stays the same? That's the worst possible outcome here, right? Like if everything stays the same and I don't take a single step to reach those goals, then it's like, okay, I have to work myself backwards so that if that's the reverse outcome, what do I actually need to do right now to start so that that thing never actually happens? That's what I mean by a reverse outcome. And, you know, stuff like that, it's when you're thinking about reverse outcome, it's thinking about like the opposite of what you want to have happen. This isn't like death, doom, and destruction. Okay. Like this, like, first of all, calm down, like just take a minute, take a deep breath. We're not talking about death, doom, zombies, and destruction here. Like just a hard stop on your murder podcasts and your whatever. I'm talking about like the opposite, like the unintended consequences of your actions. And then it's like, if things don't go as what you prepared, right? Like that, this is what I'm talking about. And I think it helps to help, like, I think it helps push me forward because it shows your risk, like what's the risk in some of these situations, right? It can really help you decide on something. So you're like improving your decision-making. And then it can even get you like kind of creative and innovative in your actual decision-making process. And then like the big thing is obviously it shows like all of your obstacles that or potential setbacks that are in your way, right? Like totally. So let's use, I'm going to use like a real life funny example, and then I'm going to use like a very serious real example. So I am really big on being prepared. I am not big on being planned. So like these podcasts, for instance, I guess I'm going to use 3 scenarios, podcast being one of them. I have like an outline that I use for my show and for like what I want to talk about. And then I feel like one of my strengths is being able to fill in kind of the gaps in between, but I'm prepared. And then I just let myself talk. And then eventually like I'll listen back to it and think like, oh, that was a good point. Next time I'll leave that out, you know, blah, 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 blah. Like I had actually recorded an entire podcast, previous podcast number 16. And I thought like, you know what, that doesn't really land. Let's just take that out and I'll start over. So a real life scenario is after I wrote my book, I did like a little mini book tour, super awesome. I had the opportunity to go to 2 different universities and speak to 2 different types of people. So I was here in Houston and I talked to like a graduate program. And then I went to Kansas and I got to talk to the entire business school. And these were both like super incredible opportunities, very grateful for them, very, very like exciting. And I was so glad to be offered those speaking engagements. And so I, you know, like, I love fashion. And I love fashion and I love to be rebellious, obviously. And so I needed to make sure that like I was dressed appropriate for the business school without being like in a woman pantsuit. And also like I have this joke that like, you know, someone's like, you need to come business casual. I'm like, okay, is it my business casual or your business casual? Because my business casual is black yoga pants and a black tank top and no shoes or socks. Like that is my business casual because that is how my business runs. Like I own a yoga studio. If you show up in a suit for an interview, I'm going to be like, what are you doing here, dude? You know, like it's yoga. And I get that business casual has like, you know, certain things. So I found this really awesome lady named Brandy. She kind of helped me put some outfits together for the speaking event. So I could be a little rebellious, but have like a cute, you know, cute clothes. So I told her, hey, I get really sweaty when I talk. So once again, yoga studio. Me teaching people means I'm standing in a hot room normally, and I'm teaching people yoga. So that means like we're all moving together, like it's 90 degrees, I'm sweaty. And I think my body now just like automatically does it. I don't know. Anytime I'm like speaking in front of a group of people, like I just start to sweat. I don't know if it's like nerves or just like an automatic brain response now. Like I have no idea. So I also joke because I have Botox in my forehead that like where you get Botox, like you don't sweat. So it's just got to like come out somewhere else. So I think that like maybe my arms pits are just like overly sweaty. So I like tell her this, and it doesn't matter who I'm talking to. Like even if I were having a staff meeting, like I sweat through my shirt. So I had told her, I'm like, hey, anytime I get up in front to talk to people, I was like, I'm really not nervous, but I just sweat a lot. And so she's like, okay. And we pick out this like super cute outfit. And I'm like, no, seriously, I need to have like a backup shirt ready to go. And she kind of like, she's like, okay, dude, like whatever. So we have everything picked out. My awesome sister-in-law comes to the event to help me. And I'm like telling my sister-in-law, I'm like, no, I'm telling you, like, I'm going to sweat through my shirt. And I'm like, we need to be prepared for this. Like, I'm going to sweat through my shirt. And so I planned, keyword, I brought my extra shirt. I figured I would blow through one shirt and then switch shirts like in the bathroom prior to my speaking engagement. Because, you know, there's always like a little like networking, get to know you before, and then you have like your speaking time, and then like, yeah, and then you're done. You like network again, right? So we get in the car, it's like kind of raining, but I had already started sweating. So we're in the car on the way there, and we pull into the parking garage, and I'm in the parking garage, and I like look over and I'm like, dude, to my sister-in-law, Amy, I'm like, dude, my armpits are so sweaty. And I also like, to be clear, and the part of the story that I haven't told, and I'm not going to tell it, is like I had a family emergency go on at the same time. And so I was very stressed out about the family emergency thing that was happening at the same time as this event. So I did have an actual stressful situation going on, but I had to hide it. And so we're like getting all this stuff out of the car, and my sister-in-law Amy looks at me and she's like, you've pitted out your shirt like already. Like you can see just like I was just pouring out sweat, and I'm like, shit, what am I gonna do? And so I had this black, that's also why I wear black a lot of the times. So I like rip my shirt off in the parking garage, and I like put my other shirt on, and I kind of put my original shirt back over it just to like, I don't know, absorb the sweat, like maybe like sponge some of it up a little bit. Wow, this is like such a great episode. But anyway, so I like trying to reabsorb the sweat like back into my body somehow. And it's just like not working. And so it's so like, to me, it cracks me up, and probably my sister-in-law is the same, because I like walked in with one shirt on and I tried so hard to wear it. But then I like all the other pictures of the event, I have another shirt on because I had gotten so sweaty, and I had even left to go to the bathroom at one point to, you know, like do the whole sweat dab thing in the bathroom. And one of the staff members was there, and she like stopped me to like talk to me because it's where I'm getting my master's, and she like stopped me to talk to me about that. And I'm just like inside dying. I'm like, hey, yeah, da-da-da. I'm like, please just let me go wipe all of this sweat off my body. Oh my God. It was luckily no one said that they noticed, but I also don't think people are mean enough to be like, wow, you're really sweaty. Well, not in that setting. At the yoga studio, yeah, but that's a normal reaction. But it's not a normal reaction to say that at like a nice event. But anyway, all of that to say, I was prepared, but I like to plan on when I was gonna pit out my shirt, like clearly did not work, like did not work. But I think to myself, okay, if I hadn't reversed outcome to that situation, because I know that like in that situation, the worst that could happen, the opposite of what I wanted to happen, right? Like I wanted to have a not sweaty shirt. And the reverse of that is having a very, very, very sweaty shirt, right? Like we're not talking about death, doom, and destruction here. We are talking about the opposite of what you want to have happen. So if I wanted to not have a pitted out shirt in all my photos, I needed to make sure that my shirt didn't have pits in all my photos. So like that meant I have to be prepared to pit out your shirt, and I had to bring another shirt just in case, but I couldn't plan on when the exchange of shirts was going to be. And I think that's so important for that type of decision or any type of decision. So like the same thing with like a staff member or a friend or whoever, it's like, okay, if this is what I want the exchange of this conversation to be with this person, you know, if I want to have it go this way, well, what's the opposite of what's going to happen? Like, what could be the reverse of that? How am I going to prepare myself for that? Because you can't plan for it. You cannot stand in the mirror and memorize questions and responses and then have that exact same thing happen in a conversation. We both know that that is not a real thing. So you have to be prepared for lane 1 or lane 2. And I think too, like, if you're prepared for both and the middle thing happens, that can kind of guide you to like an easy middle compromised ground. So I'll tell you one more kind of long story that does have to do with death, doom, and destruction. So due to reverse outcome. So it wasn't funny at the time, but it is one of the hardest days and one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. So when my dad was in the hospital, so to make a very long story short, one of the reasons I wrote the book, The Possibility Project, was because my dad was in this like really horrific motorcycle accident for an extended period of time. He like, it was really bad, y'all. And most of you who know me like know that it was a really bad situation. I have PTSD from it, like diagnosed. I did EMDR therapy, super grateful for all of the support from my family and from my therapist. And I have really like made strides in my triggers and in my therapy and in just like how I deal with things, which is great. So when my dad was in the hospital, so he was in what's called shock trauma unit for 30 days. So he was in for basically the maximum amount of time that he was technically allowed to be there. And so they, for the first 2 weeks that he was in shock trauma unit, so the shock trauma unit that he was in was what's called a level 1 trauma center, which was like the best of the best place that he could be. And I'm very, very, very grateful for that. But that basically means that you are one of the sickest people in the hospital, as in you have multiple major organ failure. And so this isn't just like, hey, Humpty Dumpty, we have to put you back together again. It's like, hey, Humpty, you're in half and like, we're going to need a minute. So he was basically in a medically induced coma, completely incapacitated for about 2 weeks. And during that 2-week time period, and during the entire time he was in shock trauma, I mean, obviously I learned a ton about like the body and how everything worked. Like I thought I knew, but like you don't until you're completely immersed in the experience of all of that. And I kind of equate it to like, it's not the same, but it's very similar to like learning a foreign language. Like you can't really learn about it until you're totally immersed in that culture and experience. And it's the same thing for like really learning your anatomy and learning about the body. Like you don't know anything until you're like immersed in that experience. I mean, the difference is like, I didn't pay to go on vacation. Like my dad had a motorcycle accident. So, you know, it's quite different, but I'm learning a lot. And, you know, I'm trying to take it all in as I was also the medical decision maker at the time. And he's in a medically induced coma and he's just really bad. Like his chance of survival was very slim. And I should have said this at the beginning, he did survive. He's made a full recovery. But at the time, his chances of survival were very, very slim. It was very, very serious. And I had been asking, you know, all the time, like, do I need to bring our family? Because he has 3 other siblings. And so I'm like, do I need to have them come, say our goodbyes, all that? Well, I had been preparing for all of this, right? Like I had been, you know, what happens if this happens? Okay, these are the next steps we need to take. What happens if this happens? These are the next steps we need to take. And it was really hard, obviously, but like all of those decisions had to be made. And so I finally got it's time. And so we brought everyone in and, you know, we all said our goodbyes and it was like, okay. And he survived the night. And then it was like a couple of days later, I had been at the hospital all day. He had made strides in his recovery. And so it would be like, you know, one day would be great. And then the next 3 days would just totally fucking suck. And then it would be like 2 days would be great. And then he would plummet on his vital signs. And then it would be like, okay, we have half a day that was great. And it was just like that the whole time, like really big highs, really big lows. And I had been at the hospital all day. He'd made great strides in his like recovery and progress. And they had like he had ended up having like a weird thing happen, right? So I'm on my way home. At the time, I lived about 35 minutes with no traffic away from the hospital. So he's in downtown Houston. At the time, I was in a suburb of Houston. So it took me, you know, like if there was an emergency, it would be a good 35, 40 minutes because I had to park into a parking garage and then also like run if I needed to, like through the hospital. And I get home and I get a call from his doctor at the hospital. And she says, hey, Erin, I need to talk to you about your dad. I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I figured, you know. And she's like, he coded. And obviously like the world stopped. And she was like, but we got him back. And I'm like, great. And then my phone died. And I was just like, holy shit. Like of all the times for this to have happened, like right here, right now, like my dad died, came back to life, and then my phone died. Like I had like, my phone was black, gone. And I was actually outside in our front yard for some reason, like having this conversation, probably because my kids were being loud. And it was like, I knew it was going to be a serious conversation. And so I ran back inside and like plugged my phone in. And I'm like, obviously just having an absolute meltdown, like a total meltdown. And I had prepared, right? Like we had prepared for this situation, but it like had happened. But what I didn't plan on, and this is where you can't plan on anything, I didn't plan on my phone dying mid-conversation. And so I ended up like getting a charge back on my phone. And if you have ever had a family member in the hospital, let alone the shock trauma unit, like those doctors are impossible to get a hold of. And so I'm like calling the nurses, like, hey, you got to put me back through. And even then, like, it's not that the nurses are hard to get a hold of. It's that all the patients there are so sick. The last thing they want to do is like be on the phone with with a family member. Like their focus is keeping the patients alive. And it's very serious. And so like the last thing they want to do is take a bunch of phone calls. And so obviously, thank God, this was like a very serious phone call. So I finally get through and they're like, oh yeah, he's fine. It's like nothing happened. And I'm like, well, what do you mean it's like nothing happened? And they're like, well, so my dad punctured his lung, one of many injuries in his motorcycle accident, but he punctured his lung. And so when you puncture your lung deflates and it has a hole in it and it works like a balloon. And so if you can't fill up the balloon, your lung doesn't inflate and you can't breathe. And so he had like a breathing tube put in, and he had a drain put into his lung to drain all of this stuff. Cause that's how your body works and how your blood pumps and all the things, like your lungs fill up. So he in a sense, in a really bad sense, he got like pneumonia. And so they had to like, pull all this stuff out of his lungs. Well, one of those things got caught in his breathing tube and they didn't know because he's medically incapacitated, and it shut down his system, and his breathing got cut off, which means the oxygen from his lungs to his heart to his brain all shut off. And so that kicked in high gear. What was really awesome was this had happened right during shift change. So both the morning nurse and the night nurse were like in my dad's room when it happened. And so it was really scary. And it was a really intense situation, but what I'm saying in all of this is you can go from sweating out your shirt and having an extra shirt, or you have these really big things happen where it's like, yeah, I'm prepared, like I'm prepared for the worst, but like you can't plan any days around it. Like you have to realize like it's within reach, but you're not actually able to grasp anything. And so like that set into motion some new expectations that I had about my dad's recovery and about like the hospital process and all that other kind of stuff too. That was like really good for us as a family and things to like, at that time too, it was kind of like, okay, I can't control what's happening in this situation. Like this is truly in my dad's body's hands and like the doctors and the nurses and all of the people involved. And so like when you reverse outcome something, whether it's your shirt for the day or like your parents' medical plans, like you have to realize you can't truly plan for everything. Like you can be prepared, but you cannot plan everything down to a T because it's going to not work. It's not going to work. And so I think like these are things that like, as you're moving forward throughout your day and through your week, like see where you're prepared or see where you're too planned. Like how much of your week have you planned out to a T and none of that actually happens the way it's supposed to? And then where can you just prepare instead? And yeah, like you have to plan meeting times. I have to plan a class schedule for the yoga studio. I can't be like, well, we're prepared to take 10 people between the hours of, no, like I totally get that this is not a calendar, what I'm talking about. But also, if you're constantly running over on all of your meetings, like maybe you are too planned and you're not actually prepared to keep running over on all of your meetings. Like maybe there's clearly something wrong there where you're like, well, shit, like clearly I need to prepare better for all of these, too long of meetings. And so I think this is where we can really get to the nitty-gritty of like getting to the next step in our decision making and in our goals, when we can truly like Missy Elliott reverse outcome. How can we keep moving forward but see both what you want to have happen and the opposite of what you want to have happen that way? I just showed you, but you can't see me unless you're watching this on YouTube. It's fine. Okay. This is a super long episode that you did not plan for, but maybe you were prepared because you saw the length of it at the bottom. But here we are. See, real life scenario right there. I would love to hear like if this episode resonated with you at all, especially prepared versus planned, the somewhat wild ass guess of deciding something versus just a wild ass guess. In your decision making. Let me know how your week goes. I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram, email me. All that information is in the show notes, and I will talk to you next week. Stay courageous, capable, and strong. And I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for listening to Unburdened by Hope. Go to your favorite podcast app, hit that subscribe button, and leave us a review. If you've got something out of our show, I'd love to hear from you. Send me your favorite takeaway or any questions you may have to info@erincummings.com. You may even just hear the answer in a future episode. Remember, you are courageous, you are capable, you are strong. It's up to you to create what's possible.